God is dead. 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 I killed him. That's what the page translates out to. It's written in 5 different languages, including French, Latin, and Malaysian. Even as an adult, I only know just a little bit of French, and very little Latin picked up from books and movies. There's no way I could have written this as an adult without help, let alone as a kid. And the translation, why the hell would I, or any other little kid for that matter, write that God was dead and that I killed him? It makes no sense, and it gives me the chills just to think about it. I triple-checked the other writing samples in the box to be sure that it had been me that had written that page. I'm not an expert by any means, but it's not hard to identify the similar features of my handwriting. It was definitely me who wrote that, and judging from the shape of some of the letters and the untidiness of it all, I think my initial assumption of being 7 when I wrote that was correct. I called my mother, the first logical step here, to see if maybe I went through a phase where I'd been reading books in other languages or something. Anything that could explain this. She picked up on the second ring. Hello? Hey Mum, I've got kind of a weird question for you, I said, then launched into the story of where I'd come across this paper and when I think I'd written it. When I was done, I heard nothing but silence on the other end of the phone for several seconds. I almost asked if we'd lost connection when she finally spoke. No, I don't think I remember anything about that. There was a little while there when you were very sick at about that age, so maybe it was something you did while having a fever or something. It could also just be something you did when you were that age, like how you used to make lists of anything and everything, or how you tied your shoes that weird way until you were 6. Something in her tone seemed off to me. It was hard to explain, but it seemed like there was something behind her words begging to escape, but just couldn't seem to squeeze through. I thanked her and hung up the phone. I thought about what she'd said, then picked up the phone for another call. She mentioned that I was very sick around that time, but I had no recollection of being seriously ill when I was that little. I remember the stomach flu from when I was 12, the appendicitis when I was 16, but nothing from when I was that little. Perhaps it was just a fever, but I wanted to talk to my doctor first. I told his secretary that I wanted a copy of my medical records from the late 90s. She said it was a little strange, and it would take some time to go into their archives, but she could do it in the next couple of hours and email me the records. I thanked her, and before she could ask me why, I hung up the phone. I felt strange, waiting for the email to come. It was like I was a character in one of those movies where the lead actor gets obsessed with a specific person or event and slowly slips into madness as he layers his wall with newspaper clippings and red yarn suspended between thumbtacks. I wouldn't let it get that far, I told myself. I would only look at the record to see if my mother had been lying to me. If she had, I'd confront her about it. If she hadn't, I'd leave her explanation alone and accept that sometimes kids can do strange things, especially when they're feverish. The email buzzed on my phone just as I sat down to eat dinner. I decided to treat myself to a steak and instant mashed potatoes. But as I read, I knew my steak would be getting cold before I got to it. For obvious reasons, I won't be sharing the actual medical document. However, I will transcribe the important part for you, because I really need help figuring out what this means and where to go from here. Date of birth, 20th of August, 1992. Height, 4 foot, 1.5 inches. Weight, 42.5 pounds. Blood type, B+. Date, 16th of January, 1999. Procedure, gastric lavage, EGD. Status, complete. Notes. Patient was admitted with complaints of severe nausea, vomiting blood, and sharp pain in the abdomen. Upon examination, it was determined the abdomen was extremely distended. After initial ultrasound, it appeared that patient's stomach was filled with liquid, causing the distension, nausea, and possible internal hemorrhaging. Gastric lavage was performed, and 1.1 litres of fluid was extracted from the patient's stomach, including a great amount of blood perceived by the medical staff present. EGD was performed to identify any tears or ulcers in the stomach lining, but none were discovered. Lab results of the fluid removed from patient's stomach returned approximately 87% O-negative blood. Patient does not recall having ingested blood within the last 24 hours. Child Protective Services have been notified. My eyes followed the words of the doctor, almost 20 years ago. My stomach soured, and I could feel bile creeping up my throat, but I fought it down and continued to the next record. Date, 5th of February, 1999. Procedure, hematoma, débridement. Status, complete. Notes. Patient was admitted with complaints of severe pain, swelling, and discoloration in the hands and feet. Upon inspection, it was discovered that the patient had a total of 8 hematomas located in the centre of both sides of his hands and feet. They were dark purple, almost black in coloration, and swollen. Given the patient's complaints of pain and the amount of swelling, surgery was determined to be the best option. Upon removal of the hematomas, deposits approximately the size of small pebbles and yellow in colour were discovered and subsequently removed. The largest deposit was 5 millimeters in diameter. Samples of the hematoma were collected and sent to the lab. The lab determined that the samples were blood type A positive and contained high levels of sulfur. The deposits were sent to the lab, and it was determined that they were all dense deposits of sulfur. Further blood testing has been ordered. I sat back in my chair. I couldn't read anymore without risking the possibility of throwing up everything I had in my stomach. I looked down at my hands and saw the small, nearly invisible scars on the top when I turned my wrists and looked at the white scars against the pink flesh of my palms. I'd always had them, but never knew where they'd come from. I always just assumed it was from falling out of a tree or something, and I never thought to ask. But now looking at them with this new revelation fresh in my mind, I felt silly for never even wondering. I covered my plate with plastic wrap and put it in the fridge. I wasn't hungry now, and my mind was buzzing. All I wanted to do was to take a shower and go to bed and maybe watch a little television to unwind, while I tried to figure out what was going on. I went to the closet in the hallway and grabbed a towel, then closed the door and went to the bathroom. The water was as hot as I could get it, just the way I like it, and it helped me clear my mind a little. I came to the conclusion that I would need to follow up with my mother tomorrow to see if I could get her to open up to what happened to me when I was little. There was a lot of things that bothered me about those reports, especially that even though I'd read through the whole report a half a dozen times, no diagnosis was ever determined. Even after reading them half a dozen times or so, I still didn't remember what happened. But it was like something was sitting in the back of my mind, humming a familiar tune, but I just couldn't make out the words. As I pondered this in the shower, I realised that that was exactly what was happening. There really was a tune playing in my head, almost like a nursery rhyme. But what were the words? It wasn't the Itsy Bitsy Spider or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but it was something of that calibre. It had words. I knew that. But I just couldn't think of them for the life of me. Something about... What was it? We eat their teeth, we eat their bones. No, that wasn't it. That was way too weird to be right. We brush our teeth, maybe. It was there, in the back of my head, just not something I could get into. I turned off the water and stepped out of the shower, feeling better already about the whole thing. Maybe I'd even go reheat my dinner. With the towel wrapped around my waist, I stepped out of the bathroom and immediately froze where I stood. Every single door in the hallway was open. The closet door I'd just closed, my bedroom door, the closet in my bedroom. I quickly threw on some clothes and grabbed the pistol from the safe in my nightstand. With my pulse beating hard in my temples, I cautiously walked around the house and found every single door, drawer, and window had been thrown wide open, even the front and back door. I stepped outside and looked around to an empty street. The only sound I heard was a distant roll of traffic from the highway a half-mile away. No dogs barked, and it was too late for kids to be playing outside. I went inside and called the police, but when they arrived, they did exactly what I thought they'd do: dust for fingerprints on a few of the doorknobs and ask if anything was missing. I told them no. They said it was probably just kids playing a prank, but that I should make sure to keep my doors locked. I told them they were locked, and the cops suggested I get a replacement lock then, maybe something harder to pick. I thanked them and locked the door behind them as they left. As I record this, I'm sitting in my bed with my loaded pistol sitting next to me on the nightstand. I can't sleep because every time I close my eyes, that song plays in my head. It's adopted an almost sinister tune now, and it makes my skin crawl to think about. And I know I'm probably just a little skittish, but I swear I can hear someone moving around in my bedroom whenever I shut off the lights.